Number 18. Thank you for deciding to send your child to Gibson's summer camp. We have found over the past few months that text messages are the most reliable form of communication. So we are asking for your permission to contact your child. By completing the form, you will be giving us permission to contact your child via text over the summer. We understand if you do not wish to grant this permission, but we ask that you complete this form indicating your preference and have your child return it no later than May 10, 2019. Number 19. Jill is driving her two young sons to the movies. After the third time that the kids have quarreled, she pulled over the car, turns around, and screams at them at the top of their lungs. Enough! One more word and nobody goes to the movies. After seeing the frightened look on the children's faces and feeling the aftermath of the hurricane that just overtook her, she drives to the movies in a state of shock and disbelief. The kids were just being kids, she thinks. How could I have lost it and scared them so badly? Jill finds herself feeling overwhelmed, exhausted, and pretty guilty for the rest of the trip. Number 20. Don't get me wrong about liberal arts. A liberal arts education can be valuable for many careers. It teaches you how to think about the problems and issues you will face in the real world. It gives you perspective, analytical, and problem-solving skills, and creative strengths, which are all important in just about any career you can contemplate. Nevertheless, if you are a student, be smart. Seek out internships and take electives like statistics, programming, or businesses to give your liberal arts education some teeth. Students and young professionals alike should seek out skills and certifications that will provide more practical credentials in marketing yourself in the career world. Number 21. At school, our kids are trained to study diligently and individually so they can do better than others on exams. If they seek help on projects from other students, they are criticized for cheating. They are given multiple hours of homework at night, forcing them to trade time with others for more time working in isolation. Over and over, they are reminded that their future success in the workplace depends on individual performance, including their grades and standardized test scores. Statistically, it doesn't, but this approach to learning does do one thing. It dramatically raises their stress levels while robbing them of social connection, sleep, attention, happiness, and health. Yet, instead of questioning the system, we judge those who can't keep up with this fierce competition for individual achievement. By the time students finish school, they are exhausted, fragile, and lonely, only to find that the success and happiness they've been promised did not lie at the end of that rainbow. Number 22. Although photocopiers are made for easy use by anyone, their complicated features and interfaces can make them frustrating. They need periodic maintenance. Tasks that require specialized knowledge, such as how to install a toner cartridge or extract jammed paper, that tends to be unevenly distributed among users. These characteristics are wonderful stimuli for informal interactions because they give people natural reasons to launch into conversation. We have observed employees turning to one another for help watching one another to learn more about the machine, and commenting on its poor operation. These casual conversations can naturally lead to other subjects, some of them work-related. And what is being copied can be as important as the fact that it is being copied. People gathered around might discover in the document coming off the machine the write-up of a colleague's project that is relevant to their own work, or a new company policy that might affect them. Rich discussions often follow. Number 23. In the good old days, you earned positive feedback slowly through good deeds or other accomplishments. With the advent of social media, our children become impatient for an immediate answer or like within minutes of sending that urgent piece of information out as a text to one person, a group, the hundreds of friends they have amassed, or the entire world. I just have to check again to see if anyone has responded yet. Every positive response gives a small drop of dopamine right into the brain's reward center. Even more powerfully, neuroimaging studies revealed that anticipation of a reward is more stimulating than its actual receipt. Plus, the reward from each response is not enough to be totally satisfying, leaving you still hungry for more. Another feature of addictive behavior. Thus, the dopamine reward of the instant feedback contributes to the time spent on social media. Number 28. Baylor University researchers investigated whether different types of writing could ease people into sleep. To find out, they had 57 young adults spend 5 minutes before bed writing either a to-do list for the days ahead or a list of tasks they had finished over the past few days. The results confirm that not all pre-sleep writing is created equally. Those who made to-do lists before bed were able to fall asleep 9 minutes faster than those who wrote about past events. The quality of the list mattered too. The more tasks and the more specific the to-do list were, the faster the writers fell asleep. The study authors figure that writing down future tasks unloads the thoughts so you can stop turning them over in your mind. You're telling your brain that the task will get done, just not right now. Number 29. Most people are confident that creativity is an individual possession, not a collective phenomenon. Despite some notable collaborations in the arts and sciences, the most impressive acts of creative thought, from Archimedes to Jane Austen, appear to have been the products of individuals, and often isolated and eccentric individuals who reject commonly held beliefs. I think that this perception is something of an illusion, however. It cannot be denied that primary source of novelty lies in the recombination of information within the individual brain. But I suspect that as individuals, we would and could accomplish little in the way of creative thinking outside the concept of the superbrain, the integration of individual brains. The head of Archimedes, Jane Austen, and all the other original thinkers who stretch back into the Middle Stone Age in Africa were filled with the thoughts of others from early childhood onward, including the ideas of those long dead or unknown. How could they have created without the collective construction of mathematics, language, and art? Number 30. Even though the first successful appendectomy was said to have been performed by a British Army surgeon in 1735, it wasn't until the 1880s that the procedure was described in medical journals and taught in medical schools. It was a welcome solution to an age-old disease, and by the turn of the century was becoming so popular that many surgeons in Europe and America made a reasonable amount of money. Shortly before he died in 1902, the German physician turned politician Rudolf Virchow was asked, "Is it true that a human being can survive without an appendix?" Even though he had not practiced medicine for many years, Virchow stayed in touch with development in the field. Aware of the increasing popularity of the procedure, he wittily remarked, "Human beings, yes, but not surgeons." Number 31. In the 20th century, average life expectancy in the United States rose by nearly 30 years. The vast majority of that increase is credited to advances in public health rather than advances in medical care, and legal interventions played a critical role in those advances. For example, requirements that children be vaccinated before they attend school played a central role in reducing occurrence of vaccine-preventable diseases. Smallpox and polio, which were once feared and deadly diseases, were eliminated from the Western Hemisphere, with smallpox eliminated worldwide, while the number of new measles cases dropped from more than 300,000 in 1950 to fewer than 100 in 2000. Likewise, following the introduction of extensive vehicle and roadway safety laws starting in the mid-1960s, the number of highway deaths decreased from roughly 51,000 in 1966 to 42,000 in 2000, even as the number of miles driven per year increased nearly 300%. Number 32. One of the key contributions of critical theorists concerns the production of knowledge. Given that the transmission of knowledge is an integral activity in schools, critical scholars in the field of education have been especially concerned with how knowledge is produced. The scholars argue that a key element of social injustice involves the claim that particular knowledge is objective, neutral, and universal. An approach based on critical theory calls into question the idea that objectivity is desirable or even possible. The term used to describe this way of thinking about knowledge is that knowledge is socially constructed. When we refer to knowledge as socially constructed, we mean that knowledge is reflective of the values and interests of those who produce it. This concept captures the understanding that all knowledge and all means of knowing are connected to a social context. Number 33. Students of ethics have been perplexed whether to classify their subject as a science, an art, or otherwise. The objection to including ethics among the sciences is that whereas science deals with what is, ethics, it is said, is concerned with what ought to be. This, at the first glimpse, appears to be a valid and useful distinction. but mature reflection reveals that it is superficial and not wholly true. Much of the confusion and disorientation in contemporary ethics may be traced to just this refusal to recognize that ethics, no less than physics, is concerned with actually existent situations and with energies that cause clearly demonstrable effects. In the first place, our opinion of what ought to be lacks authority if it ignores what already exists. Any one of our most fanciful dreams might with equal force command our present effort, unless we insist that our notions of what ought to be are somehow related to present realities. Even from this point of view, ethics must be more than the consideration of imaginary states that might satisfy our highest moral aspirations. Number 34. At the heart of individualism lies the belief that each individual person constitutes the center of one's universe. At the first glance, this seems to be a view that most people would not openly embrace. We are, after all, frequently told to look out for and care about others. Moreover, no one really likes a person who is obviously self-centered. However, we all have to admit that the talk toward a self-centered life is strong, and this tempts us to hide selfish intentions by using the language of unselfishness. If we are honest, we will admit that many things we claim to do sacrificially or because they are right are exactly the same actions that bring us personal benefit. With a bit of unbiased examination of our motives, it is hard to deny that we have a strong bias toward our individual interests. Thus, despite what we may say to the contrary, it is not hard to make the case that we are more self-centered than we are willing to admit. Number 35. New technologies encounter challenges based on both how many of our existing habits they promise to alter and the strength of these habits. Lasting behavioral change must occur through existing habits rather than attempts to alter them. People are likely to adopt innovations only if they improve rather than destroy their existing habits. In the same way that electronic calculators make mathematical computations faster, thus public policy should encourage behavioral change by targeting the least fixed habits. For example, developing countries could encourage increased protein consumption by offering new high-protein beverages rather than new types of high-protein food. Number 36. People treat children in a variety of ways. Care for them, punish them, love them, neglect them, teach them. If parents, relatives, and other agents of socialization perceive a child as smart, they will act toward him or her that way. Thus, the child eventually comes to believe he or she is a smart person. One of the earliest symbolic interactionists, Charles Horton Cooley, argued that we use reaction of others toward us as mirrors in which we see ourselves and determine our self-worth. Through this process, we imagine how we might look to other people, we interpret their responses to us, and we form a self-concept. If we think people perceive us favorably, we are likely to develop a positive self-concept. Conversely, if we detect unfavorable reactions, our self-concept will likely to be negative. Hence, self-evaluative feelings such as pride or shame are always the product of the reflective appraisals of others. Number 37. Where does one start when writing the history of water management? People, Homo sapiens, and our past ancestors and relatives must always have been managing water in some manner as far back as 6 million years, the date at which we shared a common ancestor with the chimpanzee. Chimpanzees are known to crumble up leaves to use as sponge for transporting water from hollow tree trunks to their mouths. We must assume that our ancestors were not only doing the same, but carrying water short distances, whether cupped in their hands within folded leaves or in skin containers. While we lack any direct archaeological evidence for such water carrying, it is implied by the remains of camping or activity sites found in locations distant from water sources. Such evidence is itself problematic, however, because sufficiently detailed environmental reconstructions to pinpoint the specific location of a river course or the nearest pool of standing water are difficult for the earliest periods of prehistory. Number 38. The ancient Greek historian Aeneas the tactician suggested conveying a secret message by pricking tiny holes on the particular letters in an apparently ordinary page of text. Those letters would spell out a secret message, easily read by the intended receiver. However, any other person who stared at the page would probably be unaware of pinpricks and thus the secret message. 2,000 years later, British letter writers used exactly the same method, not to achieve secrecy, but to avoid paying excessive postage costs. Before the establishment of the postage system in the mid-80s, sending a letter cost about a shilling for every 100 miles, beyond the means of most people. However, newspapers could be posted free of charge, and this provided a loophole for thrifty Victorians. Instead of writing and sending letters, people began to use pinpricks to spell out a message on the front page of newspaper. They could then send the newspaper through the post without having to pay a penny. Number 39. Many behaviors alter or change the environment through physical actions intended to achieve a desired result. For example, a hungry child might walk toward the refrigerator and open it to obtain an apple. The child's behavior directly changes the environment in order to achieve the ultimate consequence, obtaining an apple. What if instead of walking over and opening the refrigerator, the child simply says, "I want an apple," and his mother hands him an apple? In this case, the first effect made is on the behavior of another person. The child has acted indirectly upon the environment, from which the ultimate consequence of his behavior, the apple, emerges. This child engaged in a behavior of producing a certain pattern of sound that resulted in his mother bringing him an apple. The apple reached the child as a result of a complex series of events that included the behavior of both the speakers and the listener. Number 40. Although Roman wine glasses were the height of technical and cultural sophistication in their time, compared to modern glasses, they were crude. Their main problem was that they were full of bubbles. It seriously weakened the glass. Whenever a material experiences mechanical stress, which might be caused by anything from being clinked against another glass to being dropped accidentally on floor. It absorbs the force by dispersing it from atom to atom, reducing the total force that each individual atom has to absorb. Any atom that can withstand the force being inflicted on it will be ripped from its position in the material, causing a crack. Wherever there is a bubble or crack, the atoms have fewer neighboring atoms to hold them in place and with which to share the force. And so these atoms are more prone to being ripped from position.